You're listening to Boggy Talk, Faith Conversations in the Mud, a resource of Church on Bayshore.
Well, hello, and thanks for joining us today on Boggy Talk. Hope everybody's doing great. How are y'all?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
How are you?
Great. We're all great.
Answer that in a circle. I'm kind of thinking about Christmas right now, even though Halloween just...
If we have a Christmas, depending on who gets elected.
Yeah, that's right. Because the office is currently decorated with Christmas boxes for kids ministry.
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
they're
true.
putting those
Shoe
together.
boxes are around
We've
the
been starting
campus.
Christmas music and with worship rehearsals, so it's just a little bit on my mind.
Yeah, it's early.
I'm not one of those people
You are what is wrong with America.
but I'm not one of those people who start celebrating Christmas early. I'm just one of those people who has to because a lot of
No,
my
I meant
job
because you
depends
don't
on-
celebrate it every day. Every day is Christmas, Justin.
In rehearsal, I said something about we're singing a Christmas song and it talks about the tomb being empty, and I was like, yeah, because without the empty tomb, Christmas is just cute. Like it's like
Good quote.
yeah.
I
And
might
was
use
like,
that
ooh.
in my sermon. Writing that down, Justin.
That's right. Coming to a sermon near you.
So do your families, is like after Halloween, are you guys like, you decorate for Christmas, or you wait after Thanksgiving? What's your...
Depends on my schedule.
Okay.
But usually like around Thanksgiving. Sometimes right
Okay.
before.
Yeah.
Because it's Thanksgiving so late this year,
Yeah.
it might be right before.
It's
Yeah,
definitely
that's
because we usually travel over Thanksgiving. Like growing up, we always decorated right after Thanksgiving.
Like you travel on the day of Thanksgiving?
Well, we're like before Thanksgiving.
Oh,
and we're
okay.
usually out of town on Thanksgiving.
okay,
so we
okay.
decorate our stuff here in our house the weekend before we leave because we
okay.
want it to
You
be
wanna
done
come
when we get
home
back.
to
And
the
yeah, come
Christmas.
home to Christmas.
With your
Yeah.
Hallmark
Right.
movies playing.
That's right.
You know he
Right.
watches every Hallmark Christmas movie
I
every
couldn't
year?
name one.
I believe it. Yes.
Dang, he didn't
Along
let that
with
go.
the
I
Amy
couldn't name
Grant
one.
music, right?
Are you a Hallmark lady?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
Chris Brown is
Chris
Chris
Brown
Brown is
probably
sappy.
He does
some-
seem kind of sappy. He's got
very
such
sappy.
a good voice to
He
be
does.
sappy too.
He does.
like-
He could pull it off. If
He
it was,
could.
yeah, I can't pull it
It's
off.
like
He can
his
pull it
voice
off.
sounds so sincere, like every time.
Yeah, he is. He's,
Yeah.
He is
he's
sincere.
the,
He's a great
a
guy. He's
romantic
sincere
at heart, for
He
sure.
is.
February, we're getting the spouses on Boggy Talk.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should do
And
that.
we probably don't want Chris on here because he'll like show us up and all the romantic things he's done for Kelly. We'll be like, oh man, sorry.
Yeah.
Speak for
he's-
yourself, Justin.
Oh, okay.
Christy's
Fair
listening
warning.
to this. Wait, no, she's never.
She's never.
She doesn't listen
Like, what?
to Boggy Talk.
Aw.
She said she hears my voice enough.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's got a point,
I think I need to sell her on that. Kelly's on there now.
Okay,
She might-
that might work.
My
She might
Christy
listen
listens to it
then.
mainly because she'll ask me, what did you talk about on Boggy Talk today? I'm like, I just kind of brain
It's
dumped.
hard
I
to
can't
remember. It
It's
really
hard to
is.
remember.
Sometimes
So-
I go back and listen to it, and I'm like, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
we talked
that's
about
right.
that.
We did
yeah.
say that.
Well, this episode is going to drop on Election Day.
Election
Yes.
day. Yeah.
2024 election.
You voted early.
That's every day,
Did
depending
you
on
vote
your
early?
theology.
Did you vote early? Or you vote on yeah, that's true. I see what you did there.
I did vote.
Yes, I'm voting. I haven't voted as of this recording, but I am voting early because I don't want to wait till the day of.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, you're claiming that.
I am. I'm doing
Okay.
it tomorrow morning. It's on my calendar.
Speaking of that, do you remember like when I was a kid, I thought like people were supposed to be kind of secretive about who they were voting for.
Yeah.
Right? Like you didn't talk about that like as much. And now it's like,
People want to know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a
it's
topic
true.
of discussion.
Yeah.
They're a little more open about it.
anyway.
It took me 3 times
To
to
vote?
vote. Yes, I went twice to try to early
funny.
vote, and both times they were closed. I guess they weren't as open as
Trying to rig that election.
Yes,
That
they
is
were.
right. Yeah, they knew how you were voting.
Yeah,
and
and
they-
so I finally got the opportunity to vote. I was like, I'm not a signs and wonders girl, but I was wondering.
That's,
you know.
yeah, that's
funny.
wow. My dead
When I tried
grandfather
to
voted
go-
9 times easily. So just kidding.
Gosh. So, in the same spirit of politics, we are continuing with this theme. We've been talking about this the last couple of weeks. And so today we're going to talk more about just the climate of America and where we are and where we go from here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we don't know the results yet, but we will soon. And what does that mean?
We are
for
eagerly
us?
awaiting next week's Boggy Talk where
Yeah.
we will have the opportunity to reflect
Yes.
True.
on
Yeah.
this election. But right now
Right.
we're just reflecting on
Yeah.
the things.
On the things.
Kelly said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So reflection. How did we get here?
Whoa, that's a good. Well, it all started one day. No, I think
in the Garden of Eden.
That's right. The
Seriously.
fall.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah,
we
that
went
is how we got
with
here.
the fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this in episodes past. I don't want to rehash everything, but
Episodes past.
many. I was looking back through Boggy Talk, and
There's
I
a
was
lot.
like, the very first season, we jumped right in with a series on Boggy Talk called God and Country.
It was
It's like-
2020, wasn't it?
It was. We
Yeah.
did a whole
Wow.
series, God and Country.
Okay.
That was
So,
when we did like series.
We're ending this episode and just referring you back
Yeah,
to that.
I just think, I mean, ultimately, how did we get here? A number of factors. The root is, I next year you're going to be teaching through the Book of Judges, and I think the common thing in the Book of Judges is a little bit of today. People doing what's right. Everyone does what's right in their own eyes, and I think that's at the core how we got to where we are today. To broad terms. I mean, there's a lot of other factors. So
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very safe thing. I think, in a good way, how divided we are as a country and unsatisfied many people are is a reminder that this is not our home. And I think perhaps, at least within certain circles, there has been seasons where they've forgotten that. And so I think that's been the good that's come out of this. Our identity is very clearly not here.
Right.
I think there's some people that are still like hanging on that, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's kind of evident. But ultimately, I mean, we're here because of sin. We're here because people are pursuing justice and righteousness. But, I guess my issue with us even saying this, and you didn't ask this, but is the people who are like, but it needs to go back to how it was, right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, some things probably were better in the past, but not all things.
Right.
So it doesn't need to go back to how it was. It needs to head towards where it should be.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that the majority of Americans on either side of the political spectrum are really like, where should we be?
Right. Yeah.
And it is so convoluted. I think ultimately, two major streams that pollute the river are money and power, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you go to like so many of the.
We've given up on sex. No, sex.
Well, that's
sex
true.
is the third.
Yeah, that's for
Sex
sure.
is
Yeah, we
third.
talked
I'll
about that. But
in
I
a
would say those three things. I mean, really, when it comes to politics in our country, are the current. Sadly,
Yeah.
I think, and that's That's a nonpartisan statement.
Yeah.
I think people want power, and money pulls. People. The way that our republic, Democratic Republic, is set up, people are elected, and they got to have money to run a campaign, and then there's just money flowing in and flowing out, and people, and it is sadly the way it is,
Just
and
how
so
it is, yeah.
that affects a lot of things.
Yeah, I think from a specific individual standpoint, power, money, sex, you can see how individuals have went to that. But I think it's easy to just villainize those people who, on both sides of the political spectrum, Trump, Kamala, others, Soros, whoever.
Yeah.
But like, let's talk about America, like having it our way, having power. Like, we've become intoxicated by that.
Yeah.
Capitalism, greed, not capitalism as a sense of like, that's not a bad I am a capitalist, so that was not the right word. Greed.
But the corruption of
Greed.
capitalism and sin is greed.
And overlooking serious ethical issues for greed. And then sex. Truly, like, I know we talked about abortion last week, and there are issues where, that are more sensitive to this. But by and large, like, if you go back to the Old Testament and like the sexual perversion and cultures and how they would.
Yeah.
So I think it was Molech, right? Like, part of that was there was a sexually perverse culture, and they were sacrificing babies
That's right.
because they wanted to continue to be a sexually perverse culture. And I don't think we talk about this enough. We are a sexually perverse culture.
Absolutely.
And a big reason for abortion being the number it is because people want to have sex and don't want to have to deal with the consequences of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so, so that both
Preach, boy.
and on that, I'm not just picking on Democrats, because I think there's a lot of Republicans who are having abortions but are quote unquote pro-life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sorry, I got really passionate there.
Yeah, that's true.
No,
I think
it-
you're
Sorry,
absolutely
not sorry.
No, it's
But
a
you
great
got me
point.
going with those 3
Come on.
points.
That's
Yeah.
what I do. I'm just over here.
Good point. Well,
Right.
this is the state that we're in. And I mean, I know that ultimately it's never going to be, like you said, this is not our home. But that doesn't mean that we just give up, while
Right.
we're here. So how, as Christians, what do we need to be doing to get us to a better place?
I'll start with what you said first. If we don't give up, because there are a lot of Christians, and I think maybe it's just a result of maybe of holes and gaps in theology, who are like, well, the world is just going to hell in a handbasket, and we just need to survive. And I think that's not what we're called to do. We're not called to accept. I mean, we do have to face reality, but we don't have to accept it as reality like we are called. I mean, Jesus teaches us how to pray. Let your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And that's what we are called to do, is to do that, to help people see what heaven is like through our lives, through the way we live. I mean, immediately you think of like passages about being a salt and light, the city on the hill, the preservative of the culture. We are to illuminate the culture. I mean, light shines in the darkness. And so we are to be in the world, not of the world. Like lots of passages speak to this. Nowhere does it tell Christians to retreat from the world. And so we can do that confidently because of who the Lord is. Yeah. That does not mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean we're going to have laws that favor us as Christians in this country forever. It doesn't mean any of those things. It doesn't mean that the church won't maybe one day face I wouldn't say persecution, but face legislation from the government that changes things for us. It does not change our mission. Right. And so I think the call to just, hell in a handbasket, let the world go. No way, because we want people to go to heaven. We want people to know Jesus, to experience that life. And then I think that then informs how we live. So we don't disengage because of, and it's easy. I think it's easier to disengage. It's easier to be cynical. I mean, I think I could recognize a lot of ways in myself that I'm cynical about the way things are.
It's about time.
Yeah, that's right. You're
about
just
time
like,
you recognize
I know.
Kelly and I have been recognizing them for a long time.
People have been telling me all the time. But I just think
cynical.
But it is easy just to be like, to be that way. And I don't want to be that way. I don't think, but it's just, you can find that,
Yeah, we're getting older too.
I know. Also, it is. I mean, I used to judge older people for being cynical. And I'm like, I kind of get it.
I know.
You have to fight it, though. We do have to fight it.
Yeah. So if we think the world is coming to an end, we should be preppers. But not
Y2K.
Not storing our food in the basement.
Not
preppers.
storing preppers, but we
Yes.
should be people who are like, hey, Jesus is coming back, and we need you to know that you will stand before him. And he has left me on this earth to tell as many people as possible about that. Yeah. And so I would say, like, I forget who said it one time, but like Revelation, the book of Revelation isn't for us to build bigger barns. It's for us to build bigger tables where we're sitting with people and we're talking to them about who Jesus is and doing life with them. And so, like, the urgency we should have should be to declare the gospel. And, I just feel like a lot of people, like, as Christians, again, we can't really, we're talking to Christians. Like, Christians should be just so aware of the desperate need for Christ in individuals' lives because of how clear it is that we need him as a nation.
Right.
And that's probably true in most nations, you know what I mean? But, like, we think of our brothers and sisters in countries where they're persecuted for the gospel, and they have asked us repeatedly not to pray for persecution to stop, but pray for the gospel to advance. And I think we're praying more in America for persecution to stop, and we're not even praying for persecution of Christianity. We're praying for persecution. To stop. We're praying for persecution of individual freedoms to stop. Yeah. Like we want power, money, and sex, and and maybe not all three of them, but some degree of them. And I think as Christians, like, we have to remember our first identity. We are ambassadors of Christ. This is not our home. And I think as a church, like, good theology helps people to recognize that the Old Testament speaks to Israel. It doesn't speak to America. There are things we can glean from it. But the New Testament, Jesus isn't telling them. He says, my kingdom is not of this world. Paul isn't telling them to overthrow Nero. Like, he's telling them render to Caesar what is Caesar's. And that's in an oppressed government. Right. And so I think it's the recognition that Jesus's church has advanced in any form of government because of Jesus's power and not because of who's in office. And I think we need to be encouraged and strengthened and emboldened by that. Now, of course, we still have to figure out, like, okay, they're asking me to vote. Like, how should I vote? Like, sure, all those nuances. But at the end of the day, are we proclaiming the gospel personally and as a church?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think that's good. Well, and I think you guys it's a good reminder that we don't want to view like our purpose through the lens of politics. You know,
Right.
Christians can and should be involved in those things, but it's not. If our goal is like, well, how can I change the politics or whatever's going, like that's not our purpose here. Like you
Yeah.
said, we're ambassadors for Christ and the gospel. That should be our purpose, and
Right.
through that,
Right.
through individual lives changing, you know, that's where, I mean, we can't legislate morality, and
Right.
so through people's lives being changed, that's where it needs to start, and so our focus has to be there.
And I will say to that, because people may not think I'm saying this, and we need godly people who are wise to pursue positions of authority
Yeah,
and influence,
absolutely.
Yep.
where they can, with godly wisdom, influence in a culture that is increasingly not
Yeah.
godly.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires a lot of backbone, that requires a
Yes.
lot of support, that requires, you know, so we should be praying for people to be in those positions. And even not, you know, in 1 Timothy 2, when it tells us to pray, like that's not necessarily just praying for the people in positions. It's praying, you know, if whoever the next president is, in my opinion, they're not a Christian, so whichever one wins, God put Christians around them who you're speaking through, you know,
Yeah.
put people around them, help them put people in office, not even knowing they're putting people in office who will be in this way. Like it's just praying that people will be in those circles that need to be in those circles.
Absolutely. Well, those are wonderful reminders. Definitely, this world is not our home.
And Kelly Brown for president 2028.
Yeah.
No way.
I saw Ross Wyatt. I'm like, nah, Brown needs to be in that
KB. That'd be fun.
KB 2028.
Yeah. Chris would be a good first man.
He does not like drama. He would be
That's
like,
true.
No
That's
way,
why. That's
no
why
he'd
he'd
be
be
a
like,
great
listen,
first
y'all,
man.
this
Yeah.
is dumb.
No, he totally would. He would. Well, we have a few
I haven't
questions.
watched Parks and Rec, but does she have a Leslie Note vibe? I don't know.
No.
Okay, okay.
Kelly's not like that.
Okay,
No.
I don't know anything
Definitely
about
not.
that show actually.
Oh,
So
no.
other than
No.
Aziz Ansari's in it.
Yeah. No.
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 Probably
Ron
not.
Swanson.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. Chris gets. People tease him about Ron, actually.
That's funny.
Swanson. Sometimes he can have a real dry sense
Okay.
of humor.
He does, yeah.
Too much in it. Well, we have a few questions. The first one is, are Catholics Christians?
Wow, just
Yeah, we're just
Wow. I mean,
jump right
it's a
in.
good thing we
beating
went from a
around the
light
bush
topic
there.
to a
Yes, another light
serious
topic.
to a light topic.
no beating around the bush there. You want to start? Why don't you start?
Sure. Yeah.
I want to say because I think I've started all the questions.
Anybody who believes that Jesus Christ is the Lord and the only way to salvation, and that they cannot do anything to earn their salvation, truly is saved. Are there people who would identify as Catholic who believe that? I absolutely believe that. I know some of them.
Yeah.
And so I think I understand the heart of the question. I think that you could ask our Baptist Catholics, our Methodist Catholics, our whatever Catholic. So, excuse me, Christian, sorry. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, in some cases, yes. So, yeah. Do I think the Catholic Church teaches things that are antithetical to the gospel? Yes. And so I think I have a hard time understanding why Christians who are serious in their pursuit of Jesus remain Catholic. However, I do recognize that there are things about me after 20 years of following Jesus that still haven't changed that should. That my eyes, for whatever, I don't know what they are, but haven't been open the way they should. And so,
I can tell you. I'm
Go
just
ahead.
kidding.
No, I mean,
I'm teasing.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so that's what
Yeah,
I
for
would
sure.
say. But I do think it's, and I'll hand it over to you guys. As a believer, I think it is totally appropriate if you have a good relationship with somebody who's Catholic to have conversations with them about false
Yeah.
understandings.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
like the sacraments, right? There are those who
Right.
believe those are the way to grace, and there are those who, again, this is not what the Catholic Church teaches, but believe they're just like a reminder of the grace of Jesus and keep you like. Anyway,
Yeah. I'll start with a quote from Reverend Kenneth Haig, who is with the Lord, but he was my pastor like growing up as a kid. And I remember as a kid him in a sermon quoting something from Mother Teresa. And he said in a Southern Baptist church in whatever year it was, in the 1900s. I was a kid. You guys were too, kids then. But he said, I know a lot of you have a problem that I just quoted a Catholic. But a Catholic can be a Christian just like a Baptist can be a Christian. And he was one of those like ooh moments in a Southern Baptist church. And what his point was exactly what you were just saying, that
I like him.
he was far ahead of his time for a Southern Baptist pastor in a small town in Georgia, back in the day. And I think it's what you said. I mean, are there things that I get friends that I know are believers, and they, and there's some things I'm like, but I don't understand why you would still. And they're like, well, we don't actually really believe that part,
right?
And I'm like, okay, then. And I would
point.
say,
Stay.
why would you stay? And I remember going. Sitting through a secret church one time. It's a thing that David Platt does, and he was doing about all the different religions.
Too soon. That's coming to another body talk. David Platt.
Whatever, but he was talking about Catholicism, and he was like, and he said essentially the same thing. And he said, but to my Catholic brothers and sisters, I would just appeal to you on the authority of like what the Bible teaches. Why? Like, why would you stay? And and he was saying it with with sincerity, and so those things. I did. I have a great friend from college who was a believer, and she's Catholic, and she asked me to sing in her wedding, and I was like, sure. And I showed up, and we were singing some songs, and then she was like, oh, can you help lead like the responsive parts of the mass too? And I was like, good thing I'm a good sight reader. And it was me and this other lady, our girl at the time, we were singing, and there was one, and it got to a part where I was like reading the text ahead, like of what we're about to sing, and I was like, I'm not doing this.
Not reading that,
because it was something about praising Mary, and I was like, I'm just gonna be quiet on this one.
Yeah.
And I just left like, you got this one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna. My friend was not mad. She understood.
Right.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, the Catholics have a narrative. The Catholic Church has a narrative, and that's probably the biggest understatement ever made. Because a lot of world history, the Catholic Church has a narrative, and they've controlled the narrative.
Yeah.
But when you dig into a lot of it, like, again, like Mary. So Mary hears everybody's prayers, but she's not omnipresent.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. That's strange. Saints can hear all these different, like, that just doesn't make sense. There's so many things
accepted.
It
seems like aren't questioned.
Yeah. And I think in our area specifically, there are a lot of nominal quote unquote Christians, but they're most Christians. I was starting to burp. I was starting to burp, and I was like trying to catch it. So it wasn't the microphone. But I think a lot of Catholics, specifically in our area, are probably more nominal Catholics who grew up. I was like, gosh, what is wrong with me? That was not intentional. Sorry. You
got nominal Christians and nominal cracklets. Now that was probably preached in a lot of Baptist churches.
I'm sure it was.
in Dr. Haig's day, or Reverend Haig.
So I would just say, just have the conversation with people. Moving on. Right.
Well, do you have anything to add to this?
Still stuck.
Quiet.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I can't even intentionally say that again. Quiet.
Catholics. Oh, Catholics. Cracklets. You said cracklets.
Yeah, I think I'm always, I don't know if sympathetic's the right word or whatever. Anything that keeps people like in bondage to things that are not required of them is always sad to me.
Yeah.
So I think
good. That's a good word.
That's my biggest thing that I'm like, why? With
freedom,
some of
right?
it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well,
but God's grace is so great, right? Like,
that's why I want people to like
love, hope, all things. So, like, you're gonna get to heaven, and it's gonna be like free. I told someone the other day who I disagree with something. I'm like, we're gonna get to heaven, and we're not gonna care. But if we did care, you're gonna be like, you were right, James. And then we're gonna be like, we don't care. Like, I think that person's dead wrong, but I hope that they believe in the grace of Jesus, and they'll be standing at His feet. So anyway,
absolutely. Well, we talked, I think, maybe several weeks ago about, maybe it was in a sermon. We were talking, about stumbling blocks and how we are to be for people. That
think anybody marketed stumbling blocks? Like
stumbling block. I was thinking about that. That's a Christianese kind of word, a stumbling block.
Right.
Yeah. But when we have people that, we don't want the weaker brother to stumble, but there does come a point, or where is the point when it's like, okay, it's time for you to grow up.
Yeah,
like
that's
the way you
a
said
good
that.
paraphrase of that question. It's time to grow up.
It's time to grow up.
Yeah. And then the line between that and being legalistic. So I guess that's kind of a two-part question.
Yeah, I would say in this situation, you would be still the stronger brother or sister. And so the burden is not the right word, but the weight still lies with you in helping, whether it is someone who truly isn't struggling, you're called to honor that.
Right.
And if you are confronting someone who you think they need to grow up, you are still the older, the wise, the one who needs to bear that weight. And so you do that carefully and in relationship, and you say, like, hey, I think you don't want to lead somewhere. You don't want to lead anyone astray. And I don't mean astray from the truth. Just you don't want to lead someone. Maybe they have a strong conviction and they have to have that strong line because it truly is a stumbling block. And the maturity for them is not lowering their personal conviction, but it is lowering their judgment towards others who don't hold that conviction. And so helping people understand that, and again, that's a form of freedom, that you were talking about. I think that's probably where most of these are.
Right.
And then recognize that there's some people who maybe because of something that happened to them, they may just end up being stuck in that immaturity.
Right. Yeah.
And it ultimately is okay. And I think of someone that I know, and it's because of family dynamics. I know that they will never, ever, ever be able to reconcile a Christian who drinks. Right. They just are and they're so mature in so many other ways, but ultimately it's because they grew up in an they've seen it abused. They've never seen even with they just never and because of not just seeing it abused but being the recipient of they're never gonna see it that way. Yeah, and it's okay. Fine, it's okay. Yeah, you gotta let it go.
Yeah, I get it. I think what you're talking about is what someone probably is thinking of when they're asking this question typically. And so let's go back to the text that talks about stumbling blocks and causing the brother to stumble, and it's talking about food sacrificed to idols.
Right.
And so you have these people who were worshiping pagan gods. There was sexuality involved in that. There was all kinds of stuff involved in that. They become a Christian. And now these Christians are like, hey, that meat that was offered up at that, I'm not trying to be funny, that idol, bad, crazy, there's kids listening. So, all that stuff going on that you used to participate in, that you did for 30 years of your life. Hey, let's eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, I just can't. And I don't want to be around it. And it's like, but it's nothing. It's not that God's not real, all that. But they can't shake that feeling. They're probably never going to shake that feeling, because they're going to die at 37 because of those days. But, so they only got 7 years.
Right.
Yeah. But like you said, the people who grew up around alcoholism, and it's true, I think alcoholism still exists today, but there was definitely a period in our country where so many people came home to an alcoholic dad who was, and some of it was amplified by culture, but
right.
And they just can't think, how would anyone do that?
Yeah.
And yet there are many believers who aren't Southern who do drink, and have it at communion and things like that. And I would just say, I would never. I my goal in that person's life is to point them closer to Jesus, and so I don't want to do anything that intentionally does that. Now, if they are mean to people who do, that does need to be corrected.
Right.
And I would say ultimately, the church leadership should not create an environment where people are looked down upon. We are a church where people believe it is a sin to touch alcohol, and where people go to Third Planet. That is our church.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that person who goes to Third Planet shouldn't drink around that person who doesn't.
Yeah.
So in a smaller church, this is harder to flesh her out.
Flesh
her out.
It's
Just
contagious.
hard
It's contagious.
I didn't call Catholics. Catholics.
even
Oh
say
my
it.
gosh.
Oh, you did it worse.
I thought it was. Oh yeah. Okay. Well.
And maybe there's other examples. I don't know.
Yeah.
You
but
grew up in a pretty comparative to me home that was serious about some things, right?
Yeah. Both of my parents had difficult childhoods, and so for them, like, there was never alcohol in our house, ever, because of the things that they grew up with. And so I can understand completely, why they were that way. But now they're not like if, we're all around or something like that, there's not like a weirdness about it. It's just, and I think that that's kind of, some of it is understanding people's hearts behind it, or even like having a conversation. I've had friends in the past that had personally struggled, have been in like rehab centers and things like that. And like, I'm going to be cognizant of that, and we need to be, but at the same time, like both of you guys said, it's not something, I think that has to be a blanketed statement. Well, if you drink, this is a sin, blah, 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 because my opinion, it's just not how it says that.
Right.
So,
and a Christian, and saying a Christian shouldn't and a Christian won't are different statements.
True, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think legalism is saying a Christian won't. Saying a Christian shouldn't is just a opinion that you're allowed to have. A Christian shouldn't drink. That's not a wrong opinion for somebody to have. But saying a Christian won't, that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So a few weeks ago, can't believe it's already been that long, we had our fall festival.
We did.
Here.
We did. So much fun.
And a lot of people the next week, Halloween. Trick or treating. This is one of those hot button, things. I told a friend of mine when she first had kids, we were talking about like mommy wars, and I was like, oh, just trick or treating. That's mommy's war, for sure. So, should Christians trick or treat, or is this
this actually kind of is a great
kind of
segue from the previous question? I think we kind of fall into a similar category. I mean, I think should and could maybe should is like, if you say yes or no, like, I don't know. I think there's liberty here. I understand why some don't and have strong conviction, and we personally do. But also we're not glorifying the gross, the other stuff. Yeah. But at the same time, we're like, hey, that stuff is scary and has no power over you. Like, I think, I think it for us, I understand reasons why people wouldn't and respect it. We've chosen to use it as a time to be with neighbors, walk the neighborhood, talk to people. That's good. My wife was talking to somebody in our church who was sharing like what they do. They have a Halloweener party, and they grill a bunch of hot dogs and invite all their neighbors over.
Nice.
I was like, that's a great idea. Like, take advantage of these opportunities when, this is something that I guarantee you, well, I shouldn't say I guarantee you. I don't think any of your non-Christian neighbors are sitting out of Halloween. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to be out. And
the old ones are.
But here, they're still like, come, man, in Niceville, they give out some big old candy bars.
Bars.
So when you said this is like the similar one, you're talking about like there's a lot of people in Niceville who used to be witches. So when they see Halloween, it triggers them.
That's right.
Like alcohol
that's right.
And meat sacrifice idols.
That's exactly what I meant.
I get all the reasons why people don't do it. It's fine.
Yeah.
I in no way feel like trick-or-treating with our family is in any way causing our kids to think anything other than Jesus is king.
Yeah.
And so...
You just want candy.
I like Milk Duds. Yeah, right. I like Milk Duds. So...
I told somebody the other day, they were like, what's your least favorite? We did this icebreaker in life group. What's your least favorite candy? And so many people were like, Milk Duds. And I was like, give them to Pastor James.
Please don't give me Milk Duds. I don't need them. But I
there you go.
This is low.
There's liberty.
Yeah.
That's
I
it.
feel the same.
Yeah. I think
I've heard the reasons why not, and it just hasn't been like when people make a case against Christians drinking, like even though I think scripturally there's freedom there, like I hear what they're saying. When people talk to me about this one, I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
That's fine that you
Yeah.
feel the way, but I don't really see how you're getting there.
Yeah.
You know? But some of those same people, I think, also know Christmas, know any holidays, which,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, personal preference is my opinion on it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. I like to go through my kids' candy and get all the cookies and cream Hershey's. Those are so good.
I will say the other thing, and you brought out the good point in this one, is like it is such an opportunity to connect.
Yeah.
Like the gospel goes forth in community, and that is more and more challenging, even in Niceville, which, we're all about community and sports and stuff like that, but not really like in our neighborhoods often.
Yeah.
And the whole neighborhood is out. Like my neighbor who doesn't go to church anywhere and who's in a different season of life is like, hey, we're going to have chili out in the front. You bring the kids over.
Yeah.
Like, and we'll talk. And who
Yeah.
knows where that would bring. And it
Right.
does facilitate relationships. So to me, it's like, I feel like you need to have very strong reason why you pass up on that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. Well, it's always great to be able to talk about these things. If you have any other questions, you can send them to me, Kelly, at churchonbayshore.org. And thanks for tuning in, guys, and we will see you next time.
On election result, Boggy
Dun,
Talk.
dun, dun.
Thanks for listening to Boggy Talk. We are so glad you joined in the conversation. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss a beat.